Welcome to Beyond Six Figures, the podcast that helps business coaches to micro-niche, get noticed, and become fully booked. Learn from top industry leaders who've successfully taken their businesses and their lives beyond six figures. Get ready to level up your coaching business and make this world a better place, one business at a time. And now, here's your host, Ziv Raviv.
Hello and welcome to Beyond Six Figures. Today we have the pleasure of interviewing Pamela Slim. Pamela Slim is an award-winning business coach, author, and speaker who works with small business owners to help them scale their businesses and their intellectual property. She's the author of Escape from Cubicle Nation, a body of work and the widest net. The widest net really caught my attention because it's related to a topic that we look into a lot, which is how can business coaches figure out their audience and figure out their tribe. Hello, Pamela. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I want to start with just tell us a little bit about your current work. What's occupying your days? What are you doing that is exciting for you?
Yeah, well, these days I have an agency where we build licensing and certification programs for thought leaders and experts. We also help people to codify their genius, their magic into methods and models, and then understand how to package those services in ways that are really compelling and useful for the clients that they work with. So it's these days where in the old days, I maybe was doing 85%, 90% of business coaching. These days, it's more like 5%. And much of what I'm doing now is just running the agency with my amazing team.
How big is your team?
We are 8.
So what type of people are talented enough to be in your agency?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I need to be talented enough to work with them. I have my business partner, Darren Padilla, who's the head of product, who actually I've known for 25 years. And he and I worked together in Silicon Valley when we were building training, learning programs for large companies. That was the very beginning of my business that I started 29 years ago. So Darren and really a couple of our instructional designers, Josiah and Christopher, come from deep instructional design background. They all have master's degrees, instructional design, organizational development. So they have a deep body of experience around understanding how to do instructional design and also just larger implementation. For us, our main kind of core audience are people, experts who are selling to large companies. That's really the area that we get most excited about. So that's kind of the core team where we're working together day to day in the products and the systems. And then we have an amazing project manager, Brittany. We have a head of marketing and client services, Tanika, and Jeff, our scheduler. And then Christina, who just joined us, who is a pricing expert. This is something probably every business coach in the world has struggled with on behalf of their clients, where everybody wants to know how to price their stuff. And I have always had a reaction to not just however much people will pay or like position yourself to charge high dollar amounts. I'm always like, where's the math behind that? Because our clients should be asking us how to back to the business case behind pricing. So Christina is amazing. She comes from working with Disney and Google and really a deep body of work. So kind of like my clients, my team are very deep in their expertise. They are fun, optimistic people. They are collaborative and generous. And it's why I love what I do.
Can you tell me more about an ideal client of yours and maybe even tied to the transformation they went through with you?
Yeah, so there's a few. It's fun right now, and we're just in the middle of redoing our website. So anybody who's done that knows how much work that there is. But there's a couple case studies that we're leading with. One is my longtime client and dear friend, Dr. Romy Mushtaq, who is a neurologist. And when we first started working together, she had an amazing body of work as a medical professional and was really interested in this idea of the busy brain and some of the advice that she was seeing about how it is that people would give advice to busy, ambitious professionals about how to feel better and more calm was often, spend 2 hours every morning in quiet meditation. And she was saying most busy professionals may not have those. So she developed a whole methodology and then wrote a book called The Busy Brain that was published by HarperCollins, ended up building a whole protocol that organizations can use and a body of research that ended up being having about 17,000 participants, that also led to her being a chief wellness officer for some large hospitality companies where she's implementing her IP. So for her, it's really that straight thread that took a whole number of years to work on, to creating the vision of what she wanted to build, breaking it down and executing it piece by piece, and definitely building a methodology that in her case is based on science and then practical application in what she sees with her patients.
So your ideal client, in my words, is basically someone that is actually quite smart. They have a system, or they have developed knowledge and solutions on some problem. And because of your experience in curriculum design and in bringing your knowledge and kind of leveraging it to help and make an impact, and then you are, and nowadays with your new team member doing pricing, you can help them also you can show them the money. You can help them with the monetization even faster, because you can give them the mathematical scientific side of pricing. So I can now kind of more resonate with understanding your agency. And do you remember the transition phase where you did more coaching of clients and then slowly you transition to where you're at now? I'm curious about what that looked like. What were some of the milestones in your journey that started in you meet with the clients, they have some skill and knowledge, and you're trying to help them to shine, to be a lighthouse tower. And nowadays, you actually are running an agency. So what was some of your milestones in getting there?
So I have always, through the decades, as my business has grown, had an awareness that usually starts with an awareness. So I will go deep, usually for 7 to 10 years in an area. So the first 10 years were management consulting, doing training and development, design consulting. And then it was like, as I got toward the edge of, in that case, 10 years, I just started to notice that there was a new emerging area. So which then, in that case, 18, 19 years ago is where I transitioned into doing business coaching from consulting. So this last iteration, as I moved in the agency, it was really very natural. And then I was working with people like Romy, like some of the other amazing clients we work with. And I found that they were at a mature stage of business where what they needed to do was to build really strong products that had solid instructional design. We call it in our agency our Thumbprint Method, which is and this is good for any of you to think about whatever you're offering. You have market fit. Will it sell? Are you selling something that people actually want to buy? Do you have the marketing language, positioning, copy, sales process in order to actually get money in your pocket, which we all know is not an easy thing? Then you have to have the method. Will it work? Does it actually work in the real world in the best possible way? And then you have to have the model. Will it stick? Is it something that will be easy for people to remember, continue the behavior in the method that you are working with them on? And is it easy for them to share with others? So in that, when people were at that stage where they really wanted to be building things, I found that I was coaching them through how to do instructional design. And a certain part, I was like, this is hard. It's hard for me and for them. They want to be an expert. They don't want to be an instructional designer. And so I called up Darren, who I had worked with prior, who is amazing. And I said, how about if we experiment with starting to do some builds for people actually hands-on, because we know how to do it. And so that was the beginning about 2 years ago. And so we just started project after project. I began to talk more about licensing certification. I found that it was this unique area. I had written this one blog post, just what is licensing and certification? And all of a sudden I had all this natural traffic coming with people who had no prior history with me at all. So they weren't coming because they'd followed my work for decades. They found that one blog post and they said, thank you for being the one person that seems to understand all parts of the equation. So that really was some of the early projects. And then as we started getting busier. We needed to hire more people, Josiah, our next instructional designer. And we began to really see this opportunity of the way we call it is building productized services. So for ourselves, where we really are building a specific method in how we build things, we have a clear defined way in which people can buy a package for a particular work that we do. Then we, in turn, are helping them to be doing the same thing. So it really does feel like a startup within an established business. It is amazing. It's so fun and exciting and hard because there is so much work to do to really get both the operations and the products right and the process right, but then also to be doing the positioning for marketing. And so that's something that, I've been really deliberate about, of me kind of carrying the torch out there for talking about this new area. But we're now at this tipping point where we decided, and we can talk about this. Sometimes people wonder, like, when do I do a whole change to how I market myself on my website? And it's hard sometimes if you're in an emerging area to completely redesign and get rid of what you have been doing because it's still your bread and butter that you need to keep bringing in. We're now at the point where now we're really putting everything under the agency and have a whole new site. Who knows? Maybe by the time it's published, it will already be live. But prior to that, was more focusing just on me as being the business coach and kind of having the side piece of licensing. So it's iterative and there's just a natural sort of falling away. I think the more that people begin to see and hear about what I was doing, I just had a little bit less demand for coaching, which is what I wanted. And we're just now moving full bore into the agency.
This is a process of going from kind of like a person that helps people with accountability and good advice, the coach, more into a person that gets results for the client, because some of the work that you do and you delegate to your team, that's a done for you type of a scenario or done with you in some elements. How much of your work do you feel like just in terms of the dominance in it, like maybe it's a percentage, something like that? How much is it like really done for you from the client point of view? And how much is it more of a done with you type?
It depends on the product. It's either 80-20 of us doing 80% of it and 20 or 70-30, depending on the type of the product. And we have to have the full participation of the thought leader because they are the ones that are really infusing their point of view. We want to engage them in what they want to build. So that is really that 20 or 30% where we're really engaged in this more deep exploration. That's very typical to what I've done always as a business coach, of really finding out that right fit of what they want to build, what's going to work for them, what's going to work for the market. But then when it comes to actually building the assets, that's where we go and we build, like in a certification program, we actually build all the participant guides, all the materials that are needed to run the program. And just the way that I have always been a business coach, it wasn't so much just for accountability. I have always done similar things in really helping people to design and execute and bring work forward. It's just more that we didn't have that now, the agency side of really architecting and helping them to actually build the things that they wanted to build. It was always about, increasing their leadership capacity, increasing their skills. That's always the side of business coaching that I work on, is a little bit of advice, but it's also really how to pull out their natural expertise and just reflect back on how it is that we could package it.
I want to pick your brain about coaching services and even agency services, about the topic of whether to put your prices or a range of pricing on your website. And you chose to be transparent. You chose to include some price point on there. What made you decide to do that? Was that something that happened gradually, or something that you always was into doing things that way?
I've always done it. And I'm going to probably have a blend moving forward with a new site, because the reason I have done it for a long time is, on one hand, I just like people to be clear and know from the beginning that what they can expect, so that they can right away figure out what their budget is. And if it's a good fit, it's easy to have many, many long conversations with wonderful people who, if you get to the end of the conversation, you haven't talked pricing yet, all of a sudden they could be where your pricing is totally out of range. And so it's kind of a lot of wasted effort if they can't first self-identify, what they want to do. I've always been conscious to have more accessible pricing. So part of that is we are shifting a little bit as we're growing the agency, and also just my time in probably making some changes in that. And then there can be some variables now that depends on, whenever you do introduce pricing for more of a fixed service package, it will anchor immediately. So whatever price that you give, and in many ways, even if you say it's, 5 to 10,000 or 15 to 25,000, usually they're going to anchor on the cheapest part of that price. And so you have to be really thoughtful about how you go through that. So I think in that case, on the agency side, they should know enough when they're reading through what we do to have a general sense if it's a fit for them. Because we work with more mature businesses, they do tend to have more resource to be building things like programs. But I do think it can be a personal choice. The part that I don't like that's in our industry is where it feels like it's a gotcha. Like it's clearly a strategy sometimes for people to have a specific way in which they're engaging with people in discovery to walk. We probably all experienced this as end users and maybe seen it and maybe been taught it sometimes, where it's a bit of kind of pulling somebody into a very specific web, like really pulling out very specific questions and sometimes vulnerabilities in order to be anchoring a price that, per my earlier conversation about pricing, may or may not actually be where that person actually is. And so I am not I love really high prices. If I charge you $100,000 to work with me for the year, but I know for sure that we're likely to make around $1 million because we've really looked at your business and we see the bones are there, then that is fantastic. If we look at the bones of your business and see that you don't have that possibility, and I still charge you $100,000, that can be kind of problematic.
I understand. And you do have the flexibility to offer different levels of a service because you're an agency and because you're experiencing what you do. And that way, you could actually work with people that don't have the bones yet. They have the potential. They have the diamond in the rough type of readiness, maybe. And then you can make them more appropriate offer. So I completely resonate with that. I wanted to ask you about your podcast experience, because you did produce a podcast, you interviewed people. What did that do for you? Were you happy with the experience? And can you share with us just the summary of your experience, of your adventure?
I love podcasting. I did it with Escape from Cubicle Nation, my first blog and book many, many years ago. I think it's a fantastic way to be meeting other ecosystem partners, to use a term from the widest net. And it's very valuable for the audience because you can be bringing in people to be addressing the specific questions that often you may not have the full answers to. And so to me, that's the most interesting thing is I'm always on a quest to just discover and solve the problems that my clients have. I know the things that I don't personally want to solve, like pricing. That is not the way I'm wired to be a pricing expert. So I'd rather be bringing somebody in who really has that expertise.
But what did the podcast do for you? I mean, you interviewed some really big, important people that are well-known, like Pat Flynn and others. And I'm just curious, how did that impacted your business?
Well, what it does is it provides a useful way to be helpful to an audience. So they come, they listen to the conversation. By curation itself, by who it is that you're bringing, I think can say something about the kind of network that you have and the way that you can be thoughtful about bringing in answers to their questions. My friend Susan Beyer calls it being relentlessly helpful is the main purpose of marketing. And so when people can get to know you, and I have people like, Mike Michalowicz, who's a good friend, or Phil Jones, because I work with licensing and certification, when I can talk to people and bring them on who have had very effective, powerful experiences with building licensing and certification programs, it gives more depth and breadth to people who are exploring working with me. So to me, it's always been part of the overall picture of content to share is just being very useful and building more trust where people just get more answers to their core questions.
I want to hear the elevator pitch of the concept of the widest net. concept that you wrote a book about, and that your podcast bears the same show name, so like the same name. So what should people think about as business coaches with the idea of the widest net?
So the core idea is we're often taught to build a business like an empire. So we center ourselves as the sole expert, and we talk about our audience like fans or followers, where we are clearly the person who is trying to attract people to us. The widest net flips that and puts our ideal client in the center of an ecosystem where our main purpose is understanding what problem, challenge, or aspiration do they have, and how can we assemble, sometimes looking in places where they're already looking, which I call watering holes, for the very best experts that are helping to provide the full solution to solving the core problem that they have. So one of the reasons why we chose a name like the widest net, for you, somebody who loves to focus on a niche, right? It seems like the opposite kind of philosophy. It's not. All the principles of being specific and focused in your area of expertise is the same for your place in the ecosystem surrounding your ideal clients. You are the person who has decided to focus on a specific thing that you do expertly well. But often then you're identifying other people who are delivering these other services. When we know what that specific focus is, and we know our area, in my case, licensing, certification, IP, we often kind of shorten our vision of all of the places in which that work could live. And we, again, from a business model and a marketing perspective, might only be looking at things like building a funnel and using Facebook ads and really good things. I have nothing against internet marketing. There's really good tools there. But again, the main purpose there is just to only draw people to you, as opposed to looking at the philosophy, okay, if I know there's somebody like Mike who serves a very similar audience in a different way, whether it be teaching them profit first or his new publishing company with Page 2, when I go and do work with Mike, which I'm doing next month, and I'll be speaking at his event in September, I'm immediately dropping in this watering hole that he has carefully curated, that is filled with trust, that all of a sudden, one to many, I have all these people who are sort of pre-vetted as being ideal clients for me. So there is a philosophical difference in how it is that you approach what you do. And there's a very specifically different marketing strategy difference, where the ecosystem model in the widest net is a lot more about research, identifying specific people, building relationships, but then it's one to many activations in doing marketing activities.
I love it. So basically, the widest net comes into play after you already understand your micro niche. That's when you want to start reaching out with the widest net and using it in a smart way with one to many, in opposed to like have a small net that doesn't.
It's the first part, the first 4 steps in the methodology are about specifying and developing your niche. But your niche is all around the core problem, challenge, or aspiration your client has. So you have to do that piece first before then figuring out the places in person and online where lots of other folks have gathered communities of those people together. So it's integrated in the methodology.
This is so fun to talk to you, Pamela Slim. I feel like you really do get it, and you understand people's businesses and needs and ideas. And I think that listening to your show helps people with having all the values in the right place, because there's so many thought leaders out there that encourage you to just go for making more money and for crafting this perfect flow or sequence that will be the solution to all of your problems. But it's not your problems that matter. All that matters is other people's problems.
Yes. That's the thing. We're focused in the wrong place. We need to be focused on our clients and serving their problems and solving them. And then if we do that right, so many of the other things work. I love it when my clients make money. I love it when I make money. I have kids in college. I need to make money. Money is good. But it's the way that we do it. And there is, in a broad stroke, and we all know there's very different segments of people, as you said, that are driven by different values. But I've just seen too much over 30 years and being on stages and being behind stages of just hearing the way sometimes that people might even talk to an audience, right? Where it's like they're charismatic and charming and engaged, and then get backstage and are only talking about like how many, sales they closed, and just immediately making more of a transaction of an audience. And I just think over time, it doesn't feel good to the people who you're working with. And it actually makes you more vulnerable as a business person, because like your wealth is the main thing that you're centering, as opposed to the well-being of your clients. I think we can all rise together when we're doing our job to make sure that our clients whose well-being is centered.
So before we ask you the $1 million question of where can people learn more about you and your project, I just want to wrap up with one question about a risk or maybe an opportunity for you and for your agency working with a curriculum design and helping people shine through. Are you concerned about AI taking away some of your team's jobs?
We love AI. We are big proponents. We work with our clients often to help improve their operations with AI, and we use it in a very specific way in terms of work that we do. It is the conversation everybody's having everywhere, as we all should. The way that there are ways that we can be doing our job more effectively in terms of knowing how to design and be efficient and effective. Theoretically, people can go out and just, for example, create a course instantly with just a few prompts. The piece that's missing is the bigger picture discernment and understanding of different markets, ways in which we understand through lines for bodies of work. There are ways in which there's a deeper level of complexity that when you do have expertise, which each of your listeners do in their own area, it's really the way that I've been talking to a lot of my clients and then other peers about it is it really is the thing that can highlight your expertise. So you're not spending time on the things that are really just more repetitive. You can get a kickstart in those things, but you're using your higher level instinct, intuition, discernment to how it is that you're helping people to make the bigger strategic moves. So I actually think it's going to make us all better, because you have some of that pressure of knowing that the competition is not always necessarily another competitor in the market or another agency, but just people doing it on their own. That's where we have to understand what are some of the benefits and limitations. And I never believe in selling people something that they could just as well do themselves. That can be a signal to us about the types of programs that we build to make sure that it doesn't act that way. But just looking at projects that we do where us and our clients can be using AI, there is still deep conversation, work, model building that happens through that process that can only really happen in the collaborative space.
Love it. And thank you so much for sharing with us what is your point of view about the matter. Where can people go to learn more about Pamela Slim and your work?
PamelaSlim.com. And maybe by the time this goes live, it will be a brand shiny new site. You will know it if it says Pamela Slim Agency at the top, as opposed to just me. But I'm really excited. We have really codified a lot of what we're doing, and I'm excited for this next chapter.
And guys, thank you for listening for another episode of Beyond Six Figures. We'll put all the show notes of Pamela's work and her books in the show notes on our website. So thanks again, Pamela, and see you next week, guys.
Thanks for listening to Beyond Six Figures. Check out the extended show notes that include bonus material, practical tips, and exclusive resources on our website, zivraviv.com. Until next time, keep dreaming big and pushing your business and your life beyond six figures.